Hello everyone, my name is Mark Hanna and I'm the publisher of the Rio Grande Guardian, and today we're having an exciting conversation with State Senator Juan Chuy Hinojosa. Senator Hinojosa, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
So today we're having an exciting conversation, and this conversation is about the future of Texas and the exciting things happening this coming year. But before we get into this conversation, I think that it's very important that people understand how big your district is and how many constituents you serve. So talk to us a little bit about your district and how you work to serve it.
Well, first of all, the senatorial districts are larger than congressional districts. And my senatorial district runs all the way to Corpus Christi, but it is not based out of the Valley. I represent only part of Hidalgo County, about 75% of McAllen, they're all of Edinburgh, and they go west to the county line with Starr County. Then I go north, Brooks County, Falfurrias, Fremont, and then Jim Wells, Alice. Then I go east, Robstown, and Corpus Christi. Nueces County votes about 20,000 plus more votes than we do in the southern part of my district. So this Senate seat is really based out of Corpus Christi. When I first got elected in 2003, I won because all the stars were lined up just right, along with the moon and the earth, so that's how I won. So I spent a lot of time in Corpus Christi, and I really enjoy being up in Corpus Christi quite a bit. So I have, it's like a barbell. I have the northern part of my senatorial district and the southern part of my senatorial district.
So you do a lot of driving, I'm sure.
Quite a bit. It's easy. I'll put 40,000 miles on my truck in 1 year.
Wow.
Driving back and forth.
Wow. And so what is the difference between, the Corpus Christi area and then the southern district, the different needs? Because they're different communities, and you have to focus on serving all of them.
Well, what you have is the Valley obviously is a border community, and we depend a lot on agriculture, retail, and our trade with Mexico, and higher education and health care service jobs. Corpus Christi, it is more based on their harbor, the harbor bridge. They're attracting new industries because they ship a lot of oil and gas out of Ilford Shell, and it's a different type of community. But at the same time, some of the issues are pretty much identical. They have A&M Corpus Christi, and they have Del Mar Community College. We have UTRGV, and we have South Texas Community College. But we also have something in common, and that is we push for economic development, for jobs, for better health care, and to expand our universities, Corpus Christi A&M and UTRGV. And very rarely are there issues where Corpus Christi and the Valley are competing, where I really have to make some tough choices and try to balance my approach to the issues and projects.
And speaking of universities, both areas have major universities. You have Texas A&M, and then you have the UT system. What has been your experience on the impact that universities have in communities?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that a university is really part of the foundation, part of the identity, part of the culture of a community. It educates students. It provides for a huge part of the economy and the number of jobs it creates, but also in terms of the research funding that they're able to attract. One thing I learned a long time ago with a university, you have to be very careful with a name. You don't want to mess around with a mascot. Yeah. People have an emotional investment in the university.
Yes.
So universities are very much an anchor in each community. in Corpus Christi, A&M, the Islanders. They're a great university, and it's really in an island. Every time I go visit the campus in A&M, Corpus Christi, I get hypnotized because if you go to the rooms and you look out the windows, you see nothing but the Gulf, the water. So I said, how can you concentrate and focus on your studies when you have these beautiful beaches and water out in front? Here, as you well know, and the university up in Corpus Christi, the population, student population, is somewhere around 11,000, 10,000 students, continues to grow. Here, UT-RGV is more closer to 30,000. So we're a much larger university in addition to having a medical school.
And, speaking of the medical school, you had a little bit to do with that, Senate Bill 24. Being able to put out a medical school or provide a medical school in this area, make it available. What is your vision and what is the impact that it can have on this area?
First of all, there's a huge accomplishment that we've been working for many years. And I was the author of Senate Bill 24 to create not only the new university to be able to access the PUF fund, but also to create a medical school. The medical school it will be a great benefit to the Rio Grande Valley and South Texas in general. We have a shortage of doctors, underserved area. We have a shortage of healthcare and specialists. What the medical school will do for the Valley is that on a long-term basis, it's going to create thousands of new jobs. It will attract more doctors that will stay here because they will do their residency studies here, what is called GME, General Medical Education. And in addition to that, it will attract new businesses that are health-related. And it also will attract research funding from the federal government and the private sector. And I'd like to say this. Every region that's had a medical school has been extremely successful in providing health care to their residents. Keep in mind, I always use San Antonio as an example. In San Antonio, when the medical school was created in the 1950s, there was nothing but farmland and ranch land out there. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar medical complex. So for us, if we look into the future, that's what it is. We will have a multi-billion-dollar medical complex here in the Valley. And obviously, with being around the border is also of a great benefit because you'll have a lot of investors and people out of Mexico coming in to also provide and request medical services here. One more point about that. We cannot talk about the medical school. How is the medical school funded? The state funds not 100% of the medical school. They fund a big part of it. The federal government funds a small part, but then the local community also pitch in throughout the state, every region. They also help to pay for the cost of medical school because the benefits greatly outweigh the investment and the benefits.
And you said a key term there, word investment, meaning there is going to be a return. The question is how long until someone sees a return. The medical school, healthcare, specifically in this area, we have a big advantage because of all of the research opportunities. And research turns into economic development and it turns into enterprise, right? Because the problems that we have in healthcare in this area are not only here. There's people across the country, the world that have those same problems. And this research, we have a diabetes research center that is just open. And what benefit is that going to bring to this area? But getting back to funding the medical school, one of the things that comes up all of the time and people associate the medical school with it is a healthcare district. And there's a lot of different ways to fund a medical school, but at this point, a lot of the leadership has said we're very limited. Let's talk about the healthcare district and how it would help fund the medical school.
Well, obviously the voters have spoken very loud and clear. they don't want to fund a healthcare district to property taxes. And I understand that. And so I don't see us bringing up the issue of healthcare district again, unless there's other funding mechanisms and sources of revenue. Part of the reason is, quite frankly, property taxes are very high. If you look at your tax bill in November and December, the largest portion of property taxes is from the schools. But keep in mind that one of the reasons for that is that in our public school system, statewide, we're taking about 90,000 new students a year. And while the state funds the majority of the cost of schools, it doesn't do that anymore. It has reduced its share of state funding from over 50% to 38%. The federal government funds about 10%. That's 48%. So you have 52% of the cost of public schools being funded by our property taxes, local property taxpayers. And it's quite frankly unfair. The only way we can really control property taxes is for the state to step up and pay its fair share. That will decrease the local property taxes to our property taxpayers. So for the medical school, every medical school in the state, whatever region, it receives some support, financial support from your local taxpayers, whether sales tax, whether direct contribution by the cities like we have here in the Valley. And for me, you have seen McAllen step up, you've seen Edinburgh step up, the county has stepped up, Florida has stepped up. So we'll find a way to provide some local assistance to the medical school. For right now, as far as I'm concerned, the concept of creating a healthcare district based on property taxes is pretty much dead. At some point, you have to have the business community step up and say, well, we have these other ways, or we have these other ideas, or we have these other sources of revenue to help fund the medical school.
So it's all about solutions, and like you said, hey, the people have spoken. A healthcare district is not what they want, but we can't not look for funding for the medical school and for the region. So we have to find the funding somewhere.
Well, what the voters said very loud and clear, they don't want any more property taxes.
Right. That way,
and I get it. Listen. You have to respect the vote of the people, and they said no.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Well, I'm sure that that answered a lot of questions that people had on their mind. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this live stream. This is a healthy conversation about the important topics happening and issues happening this next year. Feel free to ask any questions on the comment feed. We'll do our best to facilitate those questions and share the live stream with your friends. Like I said, this conversation is all about educating the community. So let's talk a little bit about this last legislative session. Just a quick snapshot of what you saw and some of the things that you pushed before we get into the really exciting part this year.
Mark, this last session was a challenging session. People did not know, but we went in with about almost a $5 billion deficit. So at the end of the session, we had to reduce funding for many projects. So we ended up, by the end of the session, with $3 billion deficit. We reduced appropriations and costs by about $2 billion. Our budget is $217 billion budget. It is huge.
$217 billion.
$217 billion.
Wow.
I mean, it's bigger than the majority of countries in the world. So it was a challenge. So at the end of the session, we ended up taking $1.8 billion deferred funding for TxDOT. We took about close to $1 billion out of the rainy day fund, where there's $11 billion sitting there. And then we took about $200 million reduction in Medicaid that we got to make up next session. So that kept us under our constitutional limit spending constraints. So for us, the challenge was we had too many other issues They were somewhat discriminatory in nature. Anti-gay, anti-women, anti-minority, anti-religion. So we spent which bathroom to use.
Yeah.
So we wasted a lot of energy and time and resources on those debates. But most of the time, just about all the time, those issues eat up probably 90% of the press coverage.
They do.
In the meantime, there's a lot of actual nitty-gritty work going on to make sure we fund schools, we fund our universities, that we provide for border security, and that we take care of our state agency to provide services to the public. And for us, on the money side, the initial investment or appropriation for the medical school was $5.5 million. And that was a challenge. It took me just about all session to get it up to about 56.6 million. Right? But it also ate up a lot of my time. So that was a big challenge. The other one is for us, we were able to get a commitment in funding for the FAR interchange, $150 million.
Which is big.
Which is huge.
Yes.
We are able to secure $3.2 million for a Peñitas substation for DPS. Then we were also focused on scholarship funding so that we were able to fund 92% of the needs that students have that need financial aid at UT-RGB and other students throughout the state. We were able to get with $3 million for Boys and Girls Club throughout the state. So we overall, quite frankly, did pretty well on the money side. And there's so much distractions. I don't think people care which bathroom you use. It's not a problem, it's an issue. And quite frankly, they were trying to focus on people who were in public schools. And I said, well, as to which bathroom students should use, my stand on that, quite frankly, is that those are issues that the teachers, the parents, and the students themselves can work out.
Yeah.
We don't need government telling people which bathroom to use. So at the end of the day, that bill didn't pass, and I was happy to see that.
And, you know, overall, how do you focus on working with the leadership at the state of Texas when you have so many key issues? I mean, you can't focus on party lines when you're focusing on key issues, quality of life that affects everyone. So how do you focus on saying, let's work together, let's not be distracted?
The majority of issues are not partisan issues. The majority of issues is addressing problems that exist in the state. How to make government work. How do you solve problems that come up that are brought to your attention? How do you make state agencies much more efficient? Responding to the complaints, not only from the general public, but from different groups, and trying to solve those problems. We in the Texas legislature are not partisan yet, like Congress is. And I say yet because there's a strong push to go in that direction, which I don't think it's a good thing, for the reason that problems are not Republican or Democrat. It shouldn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So you have to work and focus on what's in the best interest of the state, of the families we represent, and focus on making their lives better. Right? And we need to focus on what I call the bread and butter issues: how to create more jobs, how to provide proper health care for our families, how to help business grow, how to provide more funding for education and more opportunities.
Yeah.
So those are, and how to keep the public secure and safe. Those are the issues that make the bulk of our workload, except it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah.
During the sessions, I call it control chaos. Quite frankly, we don't control our schedules. And in the Senate, I'm vice chair of finance. So we meet from the second day of the session starts, we're on. But I'm also a member of natural resources, Also dealing with agriculture and water, the Sunset Commission. Sometimes I lose track of all the committees.
The biggest role that you play is vice chair of finance, and that role of vice chair of finance to your District 20 is huge. And you just kind of went into the bread and butter issues, as you call them, which is the quality of life, healthcare, how do we make better jobs, etc. Keeping on that stance, is that how you've been able to keep all of your supporters in 2 different regions?
Well, and I guess several things. Number one, I am one of 5 senators that writes the final budget in conference. I've been doing that now for the last 6-8 years. But now I have some help. Oscar Longoria, State Representative Oscar Longoria, was Vice Chair of Appropriations on the House side. So he was on conference committee.
Yeah. So
we're able to team up and focus on some of the funding we need. Keep in mind that my delegation, I have 8 to 9 state representatives. So I have to work with each one and also take care of the priorities. And my approach is this. First, what are the funding priorities for my senatorial district? Right? The feedback that I get is the funding priorities, so I'll have 90 funding requests to work on. Then you have your statewide funding issues to fund education, to fund teacher retirement system, to fund DPS. So, those are all challenging. But at the end of the day, my district is extremely important to me because obviously they are the ones who elected me. So their funding requests have to be a priority.
Yeah.
Now, there's very little competition in terms of funding requests from Corpus Christi and those here in the Valley. They all request funding for an engineering school. Created an engineering school, got them the funding. The hardest one that took a long time was the funding to replace the harbor bridge. That's a $1 billion project.
Yeah.
It took me 8 years to cobble together $800 million.
800 million.
800 million.
Wow, 100 million a year, not bad, right?
And then what happened is that the locals stepped up, the city, the county, the refineries, and pretty much got all the money together to be able to replace the harbor bridge. So here for us, our ports are also important.
Yeah.
And these are the land ports. So we created a fund to help them build infrastructure to make it much easier for travel and commerce between Mexico and Texas. The commerce and economics of our trade with Mexico is huge for Texas. It's in the billions. I think it's over $1 billion a day. So those are the type of issues that I deal with. But there's no conflict. Very rarely is there a conflict.
And, we just talked about a world of things that have happened, the things that you've worked on, the accomplishments. The good news is that you've been very successful. The great news is that there's so much more work to do, right? This coming year, let's talk a little bit about 2018. What do you foresee the big issues for the state of Texas in 2018?
The budget.
The budget.
We as we go into next session, 2019, that's when we start the next session, we will have a projected deficit of about 10 to 11 billion dollars. Okay? But our economy is good. It continues to produce more revenue. The price of oil and gas is going up, which is a big source of revenue for our state. Sales tax is going up also. So it's a challenge, the budget. The other issues, right now there's a lot of turmoil out in the electorate with the voters. Obviously President Trump has completely created a lot of uncertainty with NAFTA. which is very important to Texas.
And you've met with him. You've met with him.
I met President Trump in Corpus Christi, and I met the First Lady, and we were dealing with the issues of Hurricane Harvey and the damage it caused up in Corpus Christi, Rockport, and up the coast to Houston. So what is happening right now is a key issue. You have a very strong push in the Texas legislature by the Republican Party being split. You have your traditional business Republicans, where they are now being challenged by a more extreme group of Republicans that are driven by ideology. And that's a huge fight going on the Republican primary. That will have a lot to do next session as to how legislation will be perceived and whether it will become more partisan or not. Speaker Strauss retired. That's a pretty big loss for the Texas House of Representatives. On the Senate side, we're pretty stable. Yeah. We're a lot more conservative than the House, in a sense. So you have all those issues that, quite frankly, some of them will not completely be decided till after the elections.
And the direction of Texas, really, you can't really tell what direction it's going to go. And we know it's in a great direction, but what specific direction until after the election?
And I didn't talk about the challenges of continuing to fund a medical school, continuing to make sure that our university is well funded, for the simple reason that it's growing at one of the best growing colleges, universities in the state.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about, I guess, in which direction our state will take. What you are seeing now, because some of the issues that were debated last session, you're now seeing the business community take a much more active role, which I think is good. Yeah. They were sitting on the sidelines for too long and allowing a small group of ideology-driven legislators set the agenda. But some of those issues were very damaging to business in general, because they're very discriminatory. So they got involved. So now you see them much more involved in elections and campaigns and defining the agenda for our state. We've always been business friendly. We've always been a low tax state. So we want to keep it that way. I don't think we ought to be making decisions based on ideology. I think we ought to be making decisions on public policy and what's best for our state.
You know, you said that one of the biggest issues is going to be the budget. You know, it's estimated that about 1,000 people are moving to Texas a day. Populations are naturally growing, which means the needs of the Texas residents are going to grow. How you know, as Vice Chair of Finance, how can the state of Texas focus on bringing in more revenue and maybe begin to innovate on streams of revenue? We've always depended on traditional oil and gas, but is there another direction to go? Is there other options?
We have, quite frankly, don't depend on oil and gas like we used to. We have now diversified into research in attracting high-tech companies into Dallas and Houston and Austin. So we have shifted from full reliance on oil and gas to other type of businesses, more service-oriented, more technology, a lot more research and brain power, if you will. Yeah. So the shift is already happening, and we are attracting more businesses from other parts of the nation that come and relocate here in Texas. We have an enterprise fund to help them make a final decision to come to Texas by providing them tax abatements, providing them investments to build up infrastructure where they want to locate.
Yeah.
And in return, we demand that they create X number of jobs.
Yeah.
So we are very cognizant that we cannot depend on on just oil and gas to fund our budget. So we have continued to diversify, very much so.
I know that the city of Austin would love to have Amazon, that second headquarters, set up. I know that so many states are almost giving everything, right, to have a big company. But let's talk a little bit about the industries. Houston is the energy sector. Dallas is, the financial sector. Texas is such a huge state that, when it comes to revenue streams, we have so much opportunity. Are the different cities that you serve also trying to find and innovate with streams of revenue to offset what the state doesn't give them based on, the district that you serve? Have you seen that?
Well, for us, yes. Here in the Valley, there's been a very rapid expansion of the healthcare industry. And will continue to do so with the medical schools. Our trade with Mexico has continued to grow. Obviously, we face some challenges right now with President Trump being so hostile with the rhetoric about Mexico and not really trying to get out of NAFTA. That creates a lot of problems for us.
Yeah.
But here in the Valley, if you notice, there's been a downturn in terms of Mexican shoppers coming to shop here for several reasons. One is peso devaluation. The other one is the violence in Mexico. But also, they don't feel that they're welcome here anymore because of President Trump's rhetoric. So, but I see that only as a bump or a dip in the road, if you will. And it'll straighten out and come out. But this place will continue to grow and expand. In Corpus Christi, what you have the private sector now has invested over $5 million in infrastructure growth. You have all these industrial companies coming in out of China, out of Korea, out of Italy, out of Europe, investing that will be able to produce over $500 million in revenue and jobs and income.
Wow.
Pipelines, liquefied gas, shipments. So it's a huge change that's taking place in Corpus Christi. They were somewhat stagnant about 10, 15 years ago. Not anymore.
Yeah.
So my district, Senate District 20, is growing very rapidly. As a matter of fact, the last redistricting I had to give up parts of my Senate District 20 because I was overpopulated.
Yeah.
So this is Texas. Used to be number one in job creation. Now we're still up in the top 3 or 4. So we're not going to be. It's always be challenging, but state of Texas will always be one of the top states in terms of economy, in terms of creation of jobs, and a very friendly business place.
I guess we can start talking about Mexico and our partners to the south. How important, just so that everyone that is watching understands, how important is it to have those spending dollars come into Texas when it comes to our economy as a whole?
I think it's extremely important. The benefits that not only the Valley but the whole state gets from Mexico commerce is in the billions, and the number of jobs are in the thousands of jobs. So it behooves us to find ways to help Mexico. Mexico has a lot of issues right now. Besides corruption, they also have problems with the security. The cartels and the different criminal elements, they become like a shadow government. And it's a real challenge. But Mexico still has one of the largest, strongest economies in the world. So you have this paradox, right? So if we can go and invest billions of dollars in Egypt, in Pakistan, right here next door to us, we ought to go and invest billions of dollars to help them grow.
Yeah.
Mexico has taken a lot of steps to trying to diversify their economy and have more of a open economy to allow other nations and other multinational companies come and invest to help them grow their business. So I mean, I see that as a very key part of Texas and our economy.
Life is better when we work together, right?
Let me tell you, I mean, I think if President Trump follows through, doesn't work out an agreement with NAFTA, and doesn't work with NAFTA, we will feel the pain, especially here in the Valley.
Well, we'll end with this. You have a lot of people to serve. You have a lot of issues and priorities and solutions that you're focused on. How do you stay motivated to get up every single day and do your job? I know that you're probably going to talk about your military training that has prepared you, but talk to us a little bit about what keeps you going and focused on serving the people.
I like what I do. I enjoy what I do. It's a challenge, trying to deal with different issues, trying to deal with different public policy issues, and I like it. And every day is a different day. You never know exactly what issues are going to come up. Whether it's a constituent is having problems with a state agency, whether there's a crisis where I got to help and move $2-3 million from one agency to another agency, whether it's issues where all of a sudden they miss a deadline, got to find a way to help and coordinate with the state government and the federal government and the local governments. One thing that I will tell the public is that there's a lot of coordination and cooperation between the federal government, Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz, and the congressional delegation, and the Texas delegation. Congressman Cuellar, Congressman Vicente Gonzalez, Phil Vela, and with us, working with us, state senators, myself, Senator Eddie Lucio, and the Valley delegation, but also with the mayors and the counties. So I mean, it's really a lot of coordination because I like to say that there's a lot of check and balances in our system. There are no kings. You have to respect everybody's position. And at the end of the day, we work together to try to solve those problems. So you talked a while ago about, well, how do you work with Republicans or other people that are not your party? It doesn't come up. We got a problem. I mean, we call Senator Cornyn for help. We deal with the federal government. We get a response right away. They don't say, well, you're a Democrat, we're going to help you. Well, I don't say, well, you're a Republican, I'm not going to call you. It's a joint team effort. I have a pretty disciplined schedule, and I try to work out every day. And my upbringing as a migrant farm worker, having to pick cotton, tomatoes, oranges, onions, having to fix flats, wash dishes, clean restrooms, and serve in Vietnam, and now be where I am as an attorney and state senator. Hey, after Vietnam, everything is easy.
You're living the dream.
It's great, and sometimes what happens is that people do not appreciate our country and the opportunities that we have in this country. If you really want to succeed and you want to live a happy life and do what you want, you got to do it. But you have to go out and get it. Nobody's going to come and give it to you in a silver platter. You got to work for it. And in our country here, we have all those opportunities, so anybody can reach their goal and objectives. And I like what I do, and I tell young people, you got to do. If you're looking for a career and a profession, whatever job it is, you have to like it. Make sure that you like and enjoy what you're doing, because you're going to be doing that every day for the rest of your life, or at least for a long period of time. If you don't like what you do, you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah.
and I'm a happy person.
Well, as you can tell, Senator Hinojosa has a lot of passion for what he does. Senator, thank you so much for your time. We had a very exciting conversation, and I'm sure a couple of months down the road we will probably do another live stream to catch up on all of the things that happened between here and then. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for being part of these RGG live series conversations. We hope that you share the conversation, learn something, and until next time, talk to you soon.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.